The Lutheran Mission to Spain. I am Pastor David Warner, and with Pastor Adam Lehman, whom many of you know, some of you know very, very well. We are LCMS church planters in Spain, been there since 2015 ourselves. I was born and raised in Montana. My wife was raised in Idaho, has a lot of Montana roots. I vicared after several unsuccessful careers, finally landed in the ministry, and I vicared in Billings, Montana, and then I served 10 years as pastor of St. John and Trinity Lutheran Churches in Fairview and Sidney, Montana. And then in 2014, received and accepted a call from the Office of International Mission to serve as a church planter in Spain. And again, it's a thrill to be here. This conference is, it's always a comfort to me to know that these kind of conferences are happening, and that the pastors of the church are working hard at the craft of being a pastor and being a preacher. So I'm just glad to be here about that. So we're going to talk about Irene, Bach, and the opportunities in Spain. This looks like Irene. It's much prettier in Spanish. I mean, Irene is fine, but Irene, and just a lovely name. And this is her and her son, Leo. And Irene is representative of many Spaniards in some ways and many different since democracy came to Spain in 1980. She was born and baptized and confirmed within the Roman Catholic Church. All of those activities, obviously Spaniards are still being born, but the baptism and the First Communion and the confirmation is becoming less and less frequent, but still very frequent amongst Spaniards. But she stopped attending, which is even more frequent amongst Spaniards. She didn't reject God. To say many do. We'll talk about the numbers a little bit later, but she just wasn't interested in being a part of the life of the Roman Catholic Church. Irene is non-typical in this way. She's a concert pianist, and she both has a music school with her husband, and she also does these mixed media presentations where she sits at the piano and she interprets an artist, and she also has some kind of a slideshow where she connects that musical composer with a contemporary artist from their time. For example, Beethoven and Goya, who had a lot in common, and you can see it in the art and hear it in the music. And she does Debussy and the French Impressionists. That's what she does. Well, she was preparing a presentation on Bach. And so she reads up on these artists and these musicians, and she's intrigued by the theological side of Bach, which leads her to Luther, which leads her to us. And so she reached out to us on our Facebook page and began a little correspondence, very tentatively, as a Spaniard will do, a little bit of interest, back and forth, several questions, and finally decided to come to Madrid when I was going there to do services, to come to the service, and then to meet for coffee afterward. Get to know us, what's going on, what is this like, interested in this Lutheranism thing. I'm not sure if I'm really going to be interested in the actual Lutherans. But she was, and we began our first catechesis sessions in person in a cafe in the center of Madrid. And then we use Zoom. Zoom is a platform for video conferencing. It's a lot like Skype, only it's on steroids, very flexible, very useful. We use it a great deal. So we did the vast majority of our catechesis. I'm in Cartagena, or I'm in Sevilla. It was over the time when we were moving. She's in Madrid. She's also attending the lay-led services that happen when there's not a pastor there, and the divine services that happen when there is a pastor in Madrid. We don't have a resident pastor there. It's hard for her. She's a concert pianist. She does a lot of weekend events, but she was there and working through that. And we know how the word of the Lord grows. And Lord willing, Dios mediante, we will celebrate her confirmation and the baptism of Leo and the baptism of Adrian very shortly. And so this is just a beautiful story and a wonderful story. And we get to see that Bach is still having his influence. How many years after his death? Just a wonderful thing there. Her husband is also a musician. I've met him. We've had some conversations. He's an Argentinian Jew, which is interesting. he's very agnostic at this point, but he's supportive of what she wants, and Lord willing, we'll also get the opportunity to preach Christ to him as well. And so this is in some ways very typical in who she was. In other ways, it's just that individual way that the Lord works through so many different means to get his word into the ears of people that he is going to draw into his church. So the LCMS mission to Spain is really a second chance for the Lutheran Reformation in Spain. Lutheran Reformation got a tiny little start. The writings of Luther made it mostly through the church into Spain in the 16th century. And while Charles V was trying to balance all of his different things in the empire, they didn't really clamp down. But when Charles retired and his brother becomes emperor and his son becomes king of Spain, Felipe II said to the Spanish Inquisition, yeah, sure, go ahead and end this thing. There will be no more Reformation in Spain. And so dozens of Lutherans or reform-minded Catholics, mostly clergy, but also laity, were burned at the stake. Hundreds more fled, and Lutheranism disappears from Spain for virtually 500 years. In 2000, a joint project from Missouri and the Lutheran Church in Argentina, our sister church, our daughter church in Argentina, we were providing support and know-how, and they were providing the missionaries. They began sending missionary pastors there, 3 in total, and they did many good things. I arrived in Spain, and the members we had at that point, very well catechized, very scattered, which is just the nature of the beast. The church also had many struggles. Spain is a difficult mission field. Most Spaniards are running away from the institutional church, and so they're not that much interested. But in 2013, the synod in the resolution at the convention said we're going to double the number of career missionaries. I received my call in 2014 to go to Spain. Pastor Lehman received his call in the beginning of 2015. I arrived in Spain in 2015 in April. The Lehman family arrived in December, and we went with the Miami Vice theme for our mission work. It was interesting in that I was supposed to work with the Argentine missionary even before I knew that Adam was going to be called, but then he needed to leave the field. And in September of 2014, August of 2014, he stopped serving, and in September of 2014, he left the field. And so the church was really at a low point. There wasn't a full-time pastor. There was one Spanish pastor, bivocational. His ministry work was all voluntary. And Dr. Arthur Just, who's been associated with the mission for a long time, made some visits. Claudio Erber, who's a mission pastor in Argentina, made some visits, just trying to hold the thing together until we could get there and hopefully help the church get back on our feet and then move forward. There's a particularly good opportunity for Lutheran mission in Spain because we're biblical, we're confessional, and we're liturgical. This is the right way to be in my understanding of things. I would be this way regardless of where the Lord put me, but it is also a huge advantage in Spain. There are over 3,000 missions in Spain. Most of them are neo-evangelical, Pentecostal, Baptist, somewhere or a mixed mash of those things. And the way they do worship does not look like church to a Spaniard. All the Spaniards are very liturgical in their thinking, even outside the church. If you ever watch a bullfight, think about the liturgy and watch a bullfight, and you're like, oh, it's a liturgy. It's a very bloody liturgy, but it is a liturgy. And so our form is recognizable to a Spaniard, and it gives us a chance to gain a hearing for our content, which obviously is quite different than what they've grown up on. So that second chance for the Lutheran Reformation in Spain is really our great privilege as we're there. The word of the Lord goes, gaining traction. Prior to our arrival in 2015, in the Evangelical Lutheran Church of Spain, there were about 70 members. 3 congregations, 0 preaching stations. We had members living in 15 different cities. We had 0 church buildings. We were worshiping in hotel rooms, private homes. It moved around a lot. Our schedule changed a lot. There was one pastor, the Spanish pastor, bivocational and a volunteer as a pastor. Very good theologian, but in a really difficult situation. Locations with every Sunday activity, especially during this interim period when the Argentine missionary needed to leave the field, there was one. Men in formation to be pastors, there were two. Today, 125 members. There's still the same 3 congregations, 2 new preaching stations. We have members in 20 cities, which is both a blessing and a struggle because that's a lot of cities to visit, and Spain's not small. We have 1 church building. We have a rental facility. You'll see that in a minute, and we have 1 in the works. We have 4 pastors. We have the 2 LCMS missionaries. We have that original Spanish pastor, and we have a pastor that we ordained last November. Locations with every Sunday worship. All 3 of our congregations have every Sunday worship, and then we have worship here, there, and the other place in between. 2 of our locations stream their services, 1 on Facebook Live, 1 on this Zoom platform every Sunday. And we have now 3 men in pastoral formation. 1 of those 2 original, 1 was ordained, 1's still studying, and 2 more men. 1 of whom was a Protestant pastor, thrown out of his church for not accepting the homosexual agenda, joined our church as a Lutheran member of our church, and then after about 1.5 years has entered into a colloquy program. And then another man who attended Roman Catholic Seminary and came out of Lutheran. And thank God to the internet and books. And he's a younger man, he was not working at the time. And so we sent him to the seminary in Santiago, the Dominican Republic. He's doing a 2-year vicarage / kind of rounding out his education there. So as we can see, the word of the Lord grows. And we have been blessed richly to see that things are starting to move forward in really encouraging ways. Still very small, obviously, but things are moving. Our context today, our mission context. I speak about a secular culture with a Roman Catholic veneer. The change in the Spanish culture from 1975 to now is stunning in many, many ways. But that centuries of we're Roman Catholics still there, but it's just this comfort level with being merely culturally Catholic, and that's just fine. And the church, in the way that they act, seems to be the Catholic Church seems to be largely comfortable with that. Spaniards struggle with identity questions, which is kind of the thing of the 21st century in general, and obviously a strength for us in our identity in Christ. But are they Spanish? Are they European? For a long time, most of Europe went, Spain? We're not quite sure for many reasons, for the Muslim occupation that lasted 700 years, for a dictatorship in the 20th century that kind of embarrassed the rest of Europe. And so are we European or are we not? Are we Spanish? Or maybe I'm Catalan, or I'm Basque, or I'm Galician, or I'm Andalusian. Spain never coalesced as a Spanish national identity like France did in particular. They're very much more regional. They've had, in the Basque region, the ETA terrorists that went from the 60s until the early 2000s. Right now in Catalonia, the independence movement, which is trying to, I think, just get more benefits from the central government. I don't actually think they really want to be independent, but that's not what they say. And that just keeps spinning kind of out of control there. And they don't have that coalescing idea that lets the rest of the country really combat that very effectively. Are they Roman Catholic, or are they a postmodern agnostic, or are they both? And I know this is not, it's the same in many places, but it is nothing to hear a Roman Catholic Spaniard say, well, yes, I'm Roman Catholic, but I don't believe anything they say. Actually, I believe more Buddhism. Roman Catholic traditions are still very important, and we'll look at one in particular in a second here. But it's primarily cultural, very low mass attendance. There'll be a big street procession. There'll be thousands of people there. And then the procession will go back into the cathedral, and 100 people out of thousands will go to the Mass, or 50 people out of thousands will go to the Mass. But Spain is still more religious than the rest of Western Europe. And so while it is a difficult mission field, perhaps it's our best beachhead for re-evangelizing Western Europe. Context for Lutheran mission in Spain. This is Mary of Las Fallas. It's a big celebration in Valencia. And so Mary, Queen of Heaven, and Jesus portrayed as kind of a China doll is just super common in Spain. You can see how big Mary is. I mean, look how small the people are. She's a giant figure. She's made of flowers. And at the end of the festival, they're going to burn her. because all of these things at this big festival, they make all kinds of sculptures and they burn it all. It's a fairly crazy festival. Is it religious? It is for some people. If it is religious, if it is spiritual, what kind of spirituality is it? Faithful Spanish Catholics, and these are approximations, but roughly 15%. Nominal Spanish Catholics, another 55%. So in a survey, what is your religion? 70% of the people are still going to say I'm a Roman Catholic, but only 15% of the population attends Mass with any frequency at all. Atheists and agnostics, the fastest growing group, 25%, disproportionately young. The church's credibility with the young is very low. And I think we see, like with Irene, you leave the church, now she starts having kids. I mean, we see this amongst our own congregations, and you start thinking, and so there's an opportunity there. But many of them are long gone and will be tough to bring back. Other, that includes Muslims. Not a whole lot of Muslims in Spain, but there are more than when my wife and I lived there in the 90s when I was in the Marine Corps, and there were very, very few North Africans or Africans in general. Now there are some. Non-Catholic Christians, there's a few of us. Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons, etc., approximately 5% of the population. Lutherans in Spain. And this is not all of our locations. And this down here, the Canary Islands, is actually about 500 miles south off the coast of Africa. But you can see Madrid in the center. That's the center of Spain, the largest city, the most important city, unless you're from Barcelona. And it is where we have a congregation, and right in that area, about 25 members. Cartagena, which is on the coast, this is the Mediterranean coast, should be there. Cartagena is on the coast, about a third of the way up from Gibraltar to Barcelona. Gibraltar's down at the tip. And we have a group there based around one family, really, but it's a small group there. If we count the people who connect electronically, there's about 22 people. Several families have had to move away for work, but they Skype in or they Zoom in to the services to stay connected. Over on the left, you see Sevilla, the most beautiful city in the world, if you didn't know that already. That's what they say anyway. It is a beautiful place. And we have a congregation there. That's where we have the location. That's where Pastor Juan Carlos lives. That's also where Pastor Adam lives. I now live in Cartagena with my wife, Shelley, and we're doing work there. That's a 5-hour drive from Sevilla to Cartagena. It's a 4.5-hour drive to Madrid. Sevilla to Madrid is better. It's a 4.5-hour drive, but it's 2 hours and 15 minutes on the bullet train. So we have members up in the north, Gijón and Oviedo, that's in Asturias. In Monforte de Lemos, which is that big, little tiny place, we have a Paraguayan man who married a Galician woman, and he's there trying to hang on to the faith. Valladolid, Logroño, Zaragoza, Valencia, Benidorm, Cartagena, Sevilla, Huelva. We have Faro, which is in Portugal. We have a family there. They also live part-time in Palma de Mallorca. And so we're scattered all over. Now we have members in 20 different cities all over Spain. But in those 3 primary locations, that's where about 75 of our 125 members live, or at least close to there. So about 50 members who have to make a real effort to get to the divine service. That means a lot of travel, especially for me. Pastor Lehman is very focused on the work in Sevilla, plus he's got the 4 children. He doesn't need to be on the road every other weekend. I can be on the road every other weekend. I am on the road every other weekend. I serve Cartagena and Madrid, and then I also pop out and see people. Not as much as I'd like to. I mean, especially the people in the far north. It's very mountainous. It's a very long time to get up there. We're not serving them as well as we'd like to. We do try to make use of the internet, like I said, streaming services, sharing sermons, recording sermons, doing a Bible study. I'm actually going to ask Pastor if I can come back at noon tomorrow and use your Wi-Fi to do my Wednesday evening Bible study in Spain, if that's okay. If I could come back into the church tomorrow, that'd be great, because I can do that one. I have a Wednesday morning and a Wednesday evening Bible study that we do on Zoom on this platform. Can't do the 10 o'clock in the morning because that would be 3 o'clock here. Sevilla worship, where we were. You see Pastor Lehman setting up in a hotel meeting room. And what is our setting here? Well, we could either have a bare blank wall, or we could leave this picture of this strange, it's called the mushroom, this strange Finnish architecture that's in the center of Sevilla. It's become something of an icon. Well, we are missionaries to Sevilla, and so we left it up there. But setting up in a hotel meeting room, we try to make it as beautiful as we can, but it's not. It's not what the Lord's divine service deserves, certainly. But we did the best we could there. The other thing we do a lot of is worship in homes, which is fine if you're a Lutheran, which is fine if you're a Latino moving to Spain, either non-Lutheran or Lutheran. But for a Spaniard, I'm not coming into your house to do church, because that's not where you do church. You do church in a temple. And they're big and they're beautiful. So this is weird. And so anytime we don't have our own location, we are limiting our ability to reach out to Spaniards. And so that needs to change. And so we thought, this is obviously the Lutheran Cathedral of Spain. Prices are expensive in Sevilla and difficult to find a place that will work. But we found this place and decided we can rent this place and turn it into a church. And we had to change a little on the inside, because you can see Pastor Lehman walking around the bar there. It had been a little miniature discotheque. We could see, we vision cast, and we could see that if we knocked out the bar, we could create a little space. So you see the contractors knocking out the bar. And finally, we got to here. So this is the nave and the chancel at San Pablo Congregation in Sevilla. We could seat about 45 people there now, which we filled a couple times. But for the most part, that's okay for now. It's not going to last us for very long, Lord willing, but it's a start. And little by little, we're adding artwork that we can take with us when we leave, so that it becomes more and more of a space more fitting to the Eucharist. The chancel full of people. The man in the middle in the clerical is Mario Santiago. He's the gentleman that went to he went to the Archbishop's Seminary in Sevilla and came out a Lutheran, and he's now in Santiago, Dominican Republic. And this was his sending service. And this actually, I can look up there and see there's several families missing. You can see the Lehmans. If you know the Lehman family, you see Adam and Christine, Noah, Abby, who's changing way too much, and Jonah and Hannah, who's changing way too much. Abby's always the same. So Cartagena, that's next on our plan here. This is typical worship in Cartagena. The second gentleman from the left in the back is Antonio. He is the man that kept services going every Sunday, devotion, something, we're going to do something. We're going to meet every Sunday in my home. And they did. I mean, if he's not working, they're having something in their home. We actually had some Scandinavian visitors that day. This is his family. I'm preaching. And then in the back, you see the computer screen, and there's it might be even 4 locations Skyped in at this point to the service. Families who were part of the church in Cartagena but moved away for work, but they still stay connected as best they can via Skype. So they're taking advantage of that. But this is almost full with 7 or 8 people. If we're going to be a little bit bigger, then we do this. Now, Shelley and I live in Cartagena, so this is our living room. We have a little more space, and we had some visitors. Some of the people came back to visit, and so this is a service that we did there last August. We're going to talk about the generational opportunity we have here. And we're not starting a seminary in Spain yet. We're connected with a seminary we just started in Santiago, the Dominican Republic. But think about Germany to Missouri. Emergency pastors, the seminary in his living room or in the log cabin. And 50 years later, Missouri's starting a seminary in Brazil. Today, the Brazilian sister church is starting a seminary in Angola. This is the mindset. My boss, Ted Cray, and the executive director for missions were at our Foro last year, which is a planning meeting. 2 years ago, I'm sorry. And they were there, and we're making a transition from a partnership with Argentina to just working with Missouri. And they said, we view this as a 75-year project. And you could just, the tension in my Spanish leaders, they literally, physically, you could just see the tension go out of their bodies because they're afraid they're going to get cut off. And that's not what we're doing here. We are here, this is going to go along long after I'm retired and died, that we're going to be doing whatever it needs to be done to help them along. That's our intention, and Lord willing, we'll fulfill it. But there is an opportunity, particularly in Spain. And this is Gorka. And Gorka is Basque Minnesotan. His mother is the daughter of Kirk Griebel, who's a pastor in Minnesota, and his father is Basque, and he's being raised in the faith, and he's getting the privilege as a 2-year-old to put out the Advent candle, which means his mother is crazy. But she's just a wonderful, faithful Lutheran mother, and she's just had her 3rd child, who Adam will baptize or be at the baptism next Saturday. And there's this opportunity to do something that we'll be talking about, like we talk about Le and Walther and everything that's gone in the centuries past. NSM, Network Support Model for Missionaries. Each missionary has a budget. Each missionary goes out and raises a network of support. There's good and there's bad in that. But is it biblical? Paul was a fundraiser. Matthew was a tax collector. It's fine. It is an opportunity to preach the gospel. And I have more friends and more contacts in the Missouri Synod now. It's just amazing. And now I have you guys. And so the church is finding out about her mission because the missionaries have to go do this. And so that's a good thing. And it's not easy. It is working, but it needs people participating in that. Then, in particular in our region, the other regions are looking to mimic this, but we have FORO, which is Spanish for forum, and that's a strategic plan and projects side of things, because the network support model does not provide money for projects. So I need to rent a building. Where's the money come from? So FORO is not that different, except that it's the mission going out and finding not just congregations, but maybe a district, or maybe, I don't know, something like, an organization of faithful pastors called the Southern District Confessional Lutherans, who want to have a part in this and who are willing to give their expertise and are willing to give some oversight. It's not a board of directors, but the FORO partners do sit at a table. They look at our strategic plan and say, well, what'd you do on this point? And why didn't you do this? It is some accountability for us, which is critical for long-term viability and long-term growth. What we have is Spain, and this is really, of the two, Shelley and I are primarily here on home service to take care of our network support model people and visit them and come back to Jackson, who have been fantastic to us. Pastor Hollowatch is a classmate of mine. Go to South Dakota that supports us, do these things. Today, I really want to talk about FORO. If you're a FORO partner, you also need to be supporting one of our missionaries. That's part of the deal. But I'd like to talk about the FORO more than that. We do have, and Shelley's going to pass these around just so I'm sure you've seen them or maybe not. This is like our bulletin insert that you cut this apart and this, you can pray for us. And then this is a paper way for people to give support, whether a gift today or whether an ongoing commitment or whatever. I think she's going to share these two. They're a little cooler, but you can't give with it. But it does tell you how to go online and give. And so we're going to pass these around just so you can have those. The newsletter, just to talk about that, this is what it looks like, either in an email or in a format to be printed. And obviously it works in black and white as well. So it's not a long newsletter at all. But what do we have in our FORO right now? We have Iowa District East, who is supporting us in a long-term way, and really they're fundamental to renting that facility in Sevilla. We have Luther Academy. Bob Bennett was Adam Lehman's vicarage supervisor, so that maybe give us a little in there, but they come and they provide instruction for us. We have individuals and some special gifts. What we need in particular are more long-term partners for wisdom, for human resources, and for financial support. What does that mean? The FORO. FORO partners come to these FORO meetings. We have one FORO meeting in Madrid every year. It's not cheap to get to Madrid. It's always worth it. You get to see Spain, but you also get to meet our members. You get to worship with us. You get to see the work on the ground. And that's vital if you're actually going to be a voice to help us be better at what we're doing. Then we also try to do a U.S. FORO, and we just did that on Saturday in Pensacola. And we try to have this meeting. This is stuff we're just getting started. So there's an opportunity for the FORO partners to come together, and also people who are interested in the FORO but aren't ready to commit yet can come to these meetings as well, and see what the work is going on. Take a look at the strategic plan with us, learn about what's going on the ground, and offer thoughts and feedback. The things we need in terms of financial things right now, I have seed money to get started with the rental location in Cartagena. We're going to do it, but we don't have that long-term support like we do with Iowa District East for this. We don't want people necessarily to give to one of these things, but this is how we would use the money that was given to the foro. Support for travel. The former pastor who's doing a colloquy travels back and forth to Madrid from about 3 hours away, and right now he's doing that out of his pocket. Support for pastoral formation. We try to bring our guys together like when Luther Academy comes, and that takes resources. Funding to produce locally worship and catechesis materials. In the long term, and I don't know how long this term will be, but we would like to own properties when the church is ready. We're not really ready yet for a congregation to own a property. Need a little bit more size and density and expertise, but we want to get there. The other things that foro partners produce are input, expertise, and accountability and a strategic plan. You guys know how church works. And so here's our plan, and you guys know how to ask questions. Visiting professors. You don't have to speak Spanish. If you do, that's much, much nicer for me. Visiting professors, we do need people to advocate for us and to make connections for us. What does this mean? If we had $20,000 more per year, this would enable us to meet all of the opportunities that we see in front of us right now. If we're partly on home service doing our own funding, partly looking for this, if we can find $10,000 more per year, we're going to maximize that. We're going to use that to the max, and we're definitely going to open that location in Cartagena. But you just asked me off the top of my head, $20,000 more per year, which is a fraction of our NSMs. Roughly, what is our NSM? $130,000 a year. That's what it costs to keep us in Spain. So we're not looking for a huge project budget. It's always going to be less than the NSM, which is why we say if you want to be a foro partner, you need to support a missionary NSM first, and the other part we'll talk about later. But $20,000 more per year would enable us to do the things that we see in front of us right now. So is that possible? Well, let me ask a couple questions. Any of the congregations here supporting through the TIM program, which is Together in Mission, an LCMS missionary? I know one is. Informally. Okay, good. Thank you. I know that Aaron McKenzie has been here. Thank you. And we just encourage, I'm for OIM missionaries. God is going to sort out, we actually do raise money for ourselves, but God's going to sort all that out. And we would love to receive support for our NSM, and that is a need. But really, even more, I advocate for the day that it's normal that most congregations are making a formal commitment to either our OIM missionaries or our national missionaries, but we're doing this so that the mother church is actually involved in the mission. Because and you all know how funding works in the LCMS and our challenges, and we're strong at some things and not at others. Those other things, this has to go this way. This is the way that it works right now, and it is working. And it makes a connection between congregations and the mission that I think is super valuable. So is $20,000 a year possible? Well, if we were $3,000 a year from your congregation and $2,000 a year from your congregation, maybe I should flip that around, or I don't know. You guys can argue about maybe you both need to do 4. But it's, if a congregation we could only do $100 a month, we'd love to support these projects. Or we could do $25 to a missionary and $100. Well, let's put it together. Let's organize it through something. And we're working on kind of putting together somebody who will organize this so that it's not any one congregation saying, and then who goes to the foro? Well, that can pass around too. And I've never had somebody come to the foro who didn't add to the foro and didn't add to the conversation and didn't walk away benefiting from it. What are the benefits for you of supporting international mission? I always say, for one thing, for your congregation, it helps you get over the navel-gazing syndrome. Because every congregation's got its problems, and we should be concerned about their problems, but when things are great, it's easy to forget about the rest of the world. And when things are lousy, it's easy to forget that we're part of the body of Christ. And the mission of Christ is going on even if we're suffering here. And so I try to keep my congregations connected. I think it's very valuable that way. You might receive ideas from us, and we certainly would receive ideas from you for how to do this work better. And so all of those things are, I think, mutual benefits of being involved. In our case, you get to come to Spain. Just saying. This is an opportunity for confessional Lutheran mission in the home of the Counter-Reformation. I get to go to all the Counter-Reformation. These huge things were built for glorifying, and this crazy architectural style that came out of the Counter-Reformation. There's all just this muscular, ugly building. It's just amazing. And it's all because of that crazy German Lutheran monk who, messed everything up for. We have a foro in Madrid, May 31st to June 2nd. You are invited. Of course, that doesn't mean that I pay for it, but you are invited. It's not expensive and the plane ticket's not that bad either. We do it at a monastery typically, and it's a great experience to come and see that. And if you want to come to that, just let me know, because you can do that. Or you know somebody who should come to that, because a lot of times there's people like, my family's from Spain, and this actually gets me right here. And so good, and we can accommodate. We just need to communicate about what it is. Can I come to your council, your Winkle, your LWML, your Sunday adult study? Normally, in Spain, my Sunday afternoon is your Sunday morning. So it's easy for me to come in by Zoom, come in by internet to your study. And it takes a little bit of pre-work, but I've done it, I don't know how many, I've done it lots of times, and present about this to whatever group there is. www.lcms.org/Spain is a page that'll take you to all things Spain. It'll take you to my information page, the layman's, our geo-missionary, Kayla Home. lcms.org/givenow/Spain40 is an online way to give support. Same thing, lcms.org/Warner, there's a Give Now button. lcms.org/Warner, there's a Give Layman, there's a Give Now button. This prayer insert is another way. We have made it fairly easy to do the support thing. All of these ways are reliable. I used to get this question a lot. Hopefully it's kind of going away. All of this money comes to us, okay? And we haven't had problems with it not getting to the right place. However, for that to happen, if a check is done, if you don't do it electronically, our name needs to be on the memo line, or Spain40 needs to be on the memo line, because that's how it gets put in our account. You can contact me 2 easy ways, pastorwarner@outlook.com or david.warner@lcms.org. Thank you for your time. Keep fighting the good fight. That is, be Mother Church. The worldwide mission of the church depends on strong congregations, mother churches supporting. And these vehicles we're talking about for supporting this are really, instead of you planting a church 20 miles down the street, these are the vehicles that help you stay and do that through OIM and through us. Pray for us. We need you, and we do pray for you. It's on a rotating basis. We pray for all the churches we have contact with. Ask hard questions, now or later, because that's how we recognize whoop, we're making a mistake here, or maybe there's something that's not being communicated correctly. And join us if you're interested. Well, just join us anyway. Let's just do that.